They believed the beaches were the decisive battlefield. They believed that if Germany's armored reserves struck hard within the first 48 hours, the invasion would collapse back into the English Channel. But on June 7, 1944, the battle that truly mattered was not fought on the sand. It was fought in the sky. And what Leo Geyer von Schweppenburg did not yet understand was that his counterattack had already been broken before it ever reached Normandy. Shortly after dawn, at his headquarters near Paris, Geyer von Schweppenburg stood over a long operations table. A detailed map lay beneath his hands, its surface crowded with colored pins marking the locations of Germany's Panzer divisions across France. He commanded Panzer Group West, the German Army's strategic armored reserve in the West. Nearly 40 years in uniform had shaped his instincts. When the enemy was vulnerable, speed decided everything. The Allied landings in Normandy had begun barely 24 hours earlier during Operation Overlord. The beachheads were still shallow. Supply lines were fragile. The lodgment had not yet hardened. If German armor could reach the coast by the night of June 8th, it might still split the Allied foothold and force the invasion into the sea, just as armored thrusts had shattered enemy formations in earlier campaigns. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, commanding Army Group B, had repeatedly warned that daylight movement under Allied air superiority would be catastrophic. Geyer believed the risk was being overstated. The sky, he thought, would decide who was right. Panzer Lehr Division began moving from its assembly areas near Chartres. The 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend advanced from the Lisieux region under SS Brigadeführer Fritz Witt, with Kurt Meyer leading the forward regiment. The 21st Panzer Division was already engaged near Caen. On paper, the counterstroke looked formidable. A concentrated armored hammer was lifting into position. Throughout the morning, situation reports filtered into headquarters. At first, nothing seemed alarming. A fuel convoy struck near Alençon. Roads cratered south of Falaise. Delays caused by damaged bridges and rail lines. These were expected complications, the normal friction of large-scale movement. Staff officers logged the messages. Pins shifted slightly. The overall picture still appeared intact. Then the pattern changed. General Fritz Bayerlein of Panzer Lehr reported that fighter bombers had destroyed his fuel trucks near Argentan. Without fuel, his tanks were forced to halt in orchards and fields, engines silent, crews waiting. From the 12th SS came a report that RAF Typhoons had caught communications vehicles on an exposed road. 3 staff cars were destroyed. 6 men were killed. The regimental command net went briefly silent. By midday, isolated incidents had become a continuous stream. Columns attacked near Thury-Harcourt. 14 vehicles destroyed by American P-47 Thunderbolts. An ammunition convoy struck outside Falaise, explosions continuing for nearly 20 minutes as shells detonated inside burning trucks. Tank transporters ambushed on narrow roads. 5 Panther tanks lost before reaching combat. Geyer could see the reports accumulating. What he could not see was the machinery producing them. By June 1944, the Western Allies controlled an air force of unprecedented scale and coordination. The United States 8th and 9th Air Forces, together with the Royal Air Force, could place thousands of aircraft over France in a single day. The aircraft reshaping the battlefield was the fighter bomber. The American P-47 Thunderbolt was heavily armored and powerfully armed. It could carry 2,000 pounds of bombs, or 8 rockets, while still retaining the speed to fight enemy aircraft. The British Hawker Typhoon carried RP-3 rockets designed specifically to penetrate armored vehicles. It had been refined to hunt moving columns and strongpoints. But aircraft alone did not explain the devastation. In the weeks before D-Day, the Allies executed the transportation plan. Rail yards, bridges, and junctions across northern France were systematically destroyed. In May alone, Allied bombers dropped many thousands of tons of explosives on the rail network from Paris to the Channel coast. The intent was clear. When the invasion came, German divisions would find their railways shattered and their road movement funneled into predictable routes. Routes that could be watched, routes that could be struck. For the invasion itself, the Allies added something Germany had never faced on this scale: Real-time tactical air control. Mobile radar tracked aircraft over the battlefield. Ground controllers remained in constant radio contact with fighter-bomber squadrons. Reconnaissance aircraft reported moving columns within minutes. The system functioned as a single network. A German column began to move. It was detected. It was reported. Strike aircraft were directed in. On June 7th alone, P-47 squadrons of the 9th Air Force flew more than 2,000 fighter-bomber sorties over Normandy. RAF Typhoons added hundreds more. From first light until darkness, nearly every major road within roughly 60 miles of the beaches was under constant patrol. The Panzer divisions were not advancing into battle. They were advancing into exposure. By mid-afternoon, the situation could no longer be dismissed. Panzerlehr, the elite formation meant to spearhead the counterattack, was being dismantled on the march south of Caen. Fuel trucks burned in ditches. Ammunition vehicles erupted in secondary explosions. Half-tracks carrying Panzer grenadiers scattered into fields and hedgerows. Bayerlein himself narrowly survived when his command car was strafed near Argentan. He dove into a roadside ditch as machine gun fire stitched the ground around him. When he emerged, his vehicle was burning. 2 members of his staff were dead. The tanks often survived individual attacks, but tanks without fuel could not move. Tanks without ammunition could not fight. Tanks without infantry and artillery became isolated targets. In a single day's movement, Panzerlehr lost more than 80 vehicles to air attack. Most were transport and supply vehicles, but the losses included several tanks destroyed before firing a single shot. The division was being stripped of its combat power before reaching the front. The 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend fared little better. Kurt Meyer's Spearhead Regiment, advancing in the afternoon light toward Caen, was caught on exposed roads. Typhoons descended with methodical precision, rockets striking vehicles in sequence. Veterans hardened on the Eastern Front found themselves unable to respond to an enemy they could barely see. At Panzer Group West headquarters, orders shifted rapidly. Columns were rerouted onto secondary roads. Movements were restricted to dawn and dusk. Requests for Luftwaffe fighter cover were transmitted again and again. None were answered. Months of losses over Germany had left the Luftwaffe incapable of contesting Allied control of the air. By evening, the counterattack planned for June 8th was no longer realistic. Whether it could be mounted at all had become uncertain. Late that night, Geyer stood alone before his map. He had trained for a different kind of war. A war of maneuver, concentration, and armored shock. That war was gone. It had been replaced by a conflict of networks, coordination, and air supremacy, where information moved faster than steel. Control of the sky now dictated everything beneath it. On June 10th, 3 days after the invasion, Allied intelligence identified Panzer Group West headquarters near the village of Lacaine, southwest of Caen. Signals intercepts, combined with aerial reconnaissance, revealed a dense concentration of vehicles and communications equipment. Shortly before 7 that evening, 17 RAF Typhoons fired 136 RP-3 rockets from roughly 2,000 feet. Minutes later, 61 Mitchell bombers released more than 500 500-pound bombs from 12,000 feet. The headquarters area was saturated. General Major Sigismund Helmut von de Wans, the chief of staff, and 17 other officers were killed. Many had been at dinner when the warning sounded. They stepped outside to observe the attack, unaware that they themselves were the target. Maps burned. Vehicles were overturned. Communications collapsed. Geyer von Schweppenberg was seriously wounded by shrapnel as he tried to reach shelter. He was evacuated and later relieved of command. Panzer Group West ceased to function as an effective headquarters. The Battle of Normandy would continue for 2 more months. German armored divisions fought bitterly around Villers-Bocage and in the hedgerows surrounding Caen. Resistance remained fierce and costly, but the opportunity to reverse Operation Overlord had passed. Not solely because of what happened on the beaches, but because of what happened on the roads leading to them. The soldiers who stormed ashore earned their place in history. So did the pilots flying P-47 Thunderbolts and Hawker Typhoons, the radar operators and air controllers guiding them, and the intelligence specialists who helped dismantle Germany's armored reserve before it could strike. By June 7, 1944, the sky belonged to the Allies, and once the sky was lost, the outcome on the ground was only a matter of time.